Last week, more than 87,000 kids went back to class in Denver public schools. That's more than 3,000 more kids than they had last fall. And after a tumultuous year with thousands of migrant students joining the district throughout the year, the district knew budgeting for this year would be a bit tricky. 9 News reporter Rachel Krause joins us now. And Rachel, what exactly is making this tough?
Yeah, DPS says they start budgeting and planning for the current school year all the way back in January. And a lot of that planning centers around how many students you're going to have in class, and with it, how many desks you need, how many teachers, how many staff members. But after taking in thousands more kids than they expected last year, preparing this time around was a bit of a challenge.
You know, it's a challenge, but I hope we're up for it.
The start of any school year can be tricky. Are there enough teachers, enough desks? For Denver Public Schools, Chief Financial Officer Chuck Carpenter says planning for this year has been challenging because of how strange the last school year was.
Literally last year, a lot of people will say things like unprecedented, and it's an overstatement, but it really wasn't. We never had a situation where we had way more kids in January coming into the district than we had in October.
As migrant families made their way to Colorado, more than 4,700 new-to-country students enrolled with DPS throughout the last year. About 3,000 of those kids coming after the state's October count that determines how much funding schools get. Andrew Hubert, director of enrollment with the district, says that's nowhere near normal.
Very, very unusual. To the point that I think that's probably the first time that DPS has accepted that number of kids past count day.
And with it, hitting DPS's bottom line.
We estimated that it would have been $20 million more in our budget had all of those students been there at October count.
The state approved funds to help districts dealing with migrant students coming late in the year. DPS got $5 million of that. Money that's helping even now as DPS continues stepping up additional staff, teachers, and resources, particularly for schools like Bryant-Webster or McMean Elementary, where a majority of these new students enrolled.
We have over 200 schools in the Denver Public Schools. There were 15 that we're monitoring really closely and only 20 classrooms. So if you're in one of those 20 classrooms, it's a big deal. That's not the entire system, and we're trying to focus our energy in those places that we know need it the most.
With students back in class for this school year, DPS says staffing levels are high, and they're in close contact with the city in case more migrant families arrive, ready for any new students coming in.
I mean, we certainly are more prepared than last year, and I hope that we do a good job for the students and the families. We certainly have a good playbook to run, and hopefully we can respond.
DPS says of the 4,700 new-to-country students that joined DPS during the last school year, right now around 80% of those kids are back for this school year. Enrollment numbers always shift over those first few weeks of school, but DPS says with fewer new families arriving in Denver, they're expecting a much calmer year for enrollment and for schools. Rachel Krause, 9 News.